Hi. So in today's lesson, we're going to go through Android Fundamentals 3.1, the debugger. If we go to the website, we take a look at task number 1. We need to download and open the Simple Calc project. This is an app that's been written for us and it's got some errors in it, and we're going to find them and fix them. If I click the Simple Calc link, then what I'm taken to is the GitHub repo. From here, you can either clone this in using Git client of some kind. The simplest approach is to just kind of click back up into the Android Fundamentals Starter Apps V2, and from here we can just click Download and choose Download Zip. Once that's downloaded, just go to your Downloads folder and extract that. And from here, we now have these projects we can open. If I go to Android Studio and I want to click Open an existing Android Studio project, go ahead and from here, we're going to go to under Users, we're going to go to Downloads, and then here's our folder. And then notice how it identifies these projects that are available here. We go ahead and click Simple Calc, choose OK. When this is loading, it's going to download some dependencies. And here, for example, it's saying, hey, do you want to update the Gradle plugin? And we could do that here, but we don't really need to. Just click Don't Remind Me for this project. We'll just go with the default. And then it's going to continue building. Once that's done, we can go ahead and take a look at the app. And let's see. We have a main activity class. We have a calculator class. If we go to our layouts, we have our activity main layout. Let's take a look at what this does. Give myself a little more room. Let's take a look at the design view. So here we have a couple of edit texts, and then we have some buttons. And these are some calculations that we can do. So when you enter some values, then you can perform the calculation depending on what button you press. If we look at the main activity class, you can step through and see what happens is when these methods are called, it calls the compute, and then it passes the calculator.operator.add, and so it passes in the operand, whatever it is you had selected, as its button. If you take a look at the compute method, here it's getting the values from the two text fields, and then it is, depending on which operator you selected, it's going to do the calculations saying add operand or subtract, divide, or multiply. And there's some helper functions to get the text. All right, if we take a look at the calculator Java class, here are the various operations that we're calling, and you get a sense for how this is being handled. All right, let's see this in action. Go ahead and run the app, and I want to choose my device for an emulator. Okay, let's give this a try. We're going to say 23 and 2 and click add. We get a value. Let's say 22 and 2. We're going to do subtract. What else? 3, multiply, and divide. Very good. So that appears to be working, but let's try some other conditions. Let's use some floating point values. So we're going to say 1.2345, and we're going to add, and then let's do another 3.23 something, and click subtract. And then finally, let's do a big one where we are, let's divide by 0. Let's see what happens here. We're going to click divide. we get infinity. Let's look over here on our log cat. And let's filter. Let's see what happens here. Let's go back. Let's see what happens if I do an operation. Subtract says error. Let's go back to the log cat. And let's filter against error. Okay. Then we get a calculator activity number format exception, empty string. So the next question is, how do we debug this? Let's go ahead and stop the app. And from here, we can run the app. Right now, when you click the run button, it's just going to run without any debugging options available to you. But if I click the little run debug app and I click here, now when I run the app, we can go ahead and try this. And from here, if I say, and I click add, I click error, here I get the same runtime error as before, but this time I can set a breakpoint. Now, a breakpoint is a place in the code where we want to pause the execution of the app so that we can check things like evaluating what a variable is set to and step through various things. So let's go back to our main activity. And from here, let's go to the compute method and let's select, notice here on the left, I've got my line numbers. And then I have this little gutter. Notice this kind of extra space between here. If I click there, I now have set a breakpoint. Now you can set a breakpoint. You can click it again to remove it. If I set it here and I actually want to set it down here, I can go ahead and click and run it there. So for now, let's go ahead and set a breakpoint on this first in the try block where it says operand 1 equals get operand. Now let's go back to the app and it's still running. And from here, I can perform an operation. Now, notice what happens. So the breakpoint has now stopped. If I go back here and notice here on the left, we've got a couple of views that have opened up. So here, notice we're in the debug view. And here we have what is called frames. We also have threads. And we also have a variables view. The frames view shows each class and method that's been called in the app, with the most recent one at the top. So here we've called onAdd, and then we have braked or stopped in the compute method. So notice here, if I click back, so notice what happens. I clicked the onAdd. So that method was called previous to where my breakpoint. If I click here, now this is where I'm at. So from here, you can do a couple of things. You can check the variables. Notice if I look here, the operator currently selected is add. When I take a look at the edit text view, I can see the properties for this operand 1 edit text. And there's a whole lot of values set here. In fact, it's more than enough information. But notice down here it says mtext. Here's where the value is set. Notice over here we have our line 96 tells us where we have our breakpoint. Notice down here, let me go back up and notice we have the watches view, and what this does is allows me to, the watches pane allows you to show values for any variable that you want to set and allows you to keep track of a specific variable. We'll look at that here in a second. But for now, notice that we're on the breakpoint. We can continue running the app if I come over here and I press the continue button to continue running. Now, notice we still get our error. If I go back to logcat, we still have our error that has occurred. If we have run an app, let's go ahead and click stop here. Let's say I've run my app and it's currently running here. If I want to debug into a currently running application, then what I can do is, while this is running, if I go back here, I can choose run, and then I can say debug, and I can say attach debugger to existing Android process. So if I go down here to the bottom, and now it shows what's currently running, and I can attach to this process, and I click OK. Now I'm in the debug mode again, and if I type a value and I do a command, notice it breaks again. Again, when we're in this view, we can go ahead and click continue, and we're running through. Let's go back to this, and let's enter a value for both of these, and let's click divide, and now we have our breakpoint. The reason we are in this view, we want to be able to evaluate each line of code, and there are a couple of steps, things that we want to do. If we take a look at this line here, you have a number of functions that you can call. You can say step over, which goes from this line to the next line. We can say step into, which takes us into the actual methods that are called within that line that is currently paused. We can, from here, what do we got? Force step into, and then we have step out, which takes us out of the current function. So for now, let's go ahead and click step over. And if we take a look at the variables, notice operand 1 is set to 33. If I click step over, notice here that operand 2 was set to 34, and we've stepped over and we're now into the next process. Let's keep going by pressing step over, and here we've got, and now we're into our switch statement. Notice that it even shows some helpful hints as to what the values are. So the operator that we're switching against is the div for division or to divide. And then I can step over, and now I'm into this value. At this point, I want to click step into, and from here, I'm now going in here. I want to step into one more time. And now notice it's taking me into the calculator, and I'm actually into this method that is getting called, that we're processing the value. Notice we have the variables that are available to us. And if I step into again, it's going to go back out, and then here, and one more time. And now we're at the end of this calculation. And notice that it's telling me here the operand 1 is 33, operand 2 is 34, and here's the result. And so it's calculating as it goes, but what we're doing is we're stepping into each line to see how each line is working. Okay, let's go ahead and continue this. And what I want to do next is add another breakpoint, and we're going to show how we identify a condition so that we only break when a certain condition happens. So here I'm going to add a breakpoint at the start of my switch statement, and then I'm going to right click on that, and it automatically allows me to enter a condition. What I want to do is enter the following. I'm going to say operand 1, and it gives me hints as to what is available, is equal to 42, and then and I do the two pipe lines, and then I say operand 2 is equal, and I have 2 equals 42. Now I click done. What this means is this breakpoint will only happen if this condition is met, which is operand 1 or operand 2 is equal to 42. So let's go ahead and debug this, and we'll run it again. If it wasn't already running, it's okay. Here, let's just see, I'm just going to run into this and then click multiply, and then now down here I'm going to go ahead and continue, and notice it didn't do anything. It didn't check against this operand breakpoint. If I come back here and I set one of these to 42, now when I do the same thing, now when I click in here, and if I go ahead and click continue, notice it now catches on that breakpoint because the conditional was met. Something else you can do while we're here, notice over here we have a couple of buttons. We have view breakpoints. We can see all of the available breakpoints that are here, and notice that we have them set to each line, and notice we have our conditional. You can check or uncheck these. Also, you can kind of disable or enable those. Notice over here on the left, they're kind of grayed out, so to speak. They're empty, so that means they've been disabled, and here we can enable them. So there's a couple of options as you're working with breakpoints. You can set multiple ones, and then you can turn them on or off as you go through the code. Notice right now we have this, I've stopped at this breakpoint. If I were to continue, if you didn't already have this, let's go back and let's run this again, and we can skip over this breakpoint. And so at this point, let's make sure we're all at this area. If I were to right click on the breakpoint, we see the operation, the condition that we've already set. If I come down here, notice we have our variables. We can see variable operand 1 and operand 2. If I right click on the operand, I can set the value. So I'll go ahead and set value, and I want to change this to 10, and then I'm going to press return. Now, if I continue, you'll notice that my operand, the result changed, was set to 32 because I was doing addition and I said 23 plus 10, which changed it to 33. Now the value in the text field didn't change, but the variable changed. So this is a way that you can break into your code and then modify the variable in order to see how it behaves under different conditions without having to run the app again and again. Let's do another example. Let's go ahead and press add again, and we're going to continue into our breakpoint at the switch operator. And from here, we can click the evaluate expression button, or you can come up to run and choose evaluate expression. From here, we can enter any code into this expression list, and I can say, for example, m operand 1 edit text dot get hint, and press return, and notice it evaluates that for me. Notice that the result is type operand 1 is the text that was there. So you can use evaluate expression to run code within the current block of where you're at, as well as you can use it to change values of variables, all sorts of things. Let's go ahead and close this out. So at this point, we've reviewed a variety of things you can do with the debugger. And of course, the lesson suggests one way. The next step is to go ahead and, once we've identified why this causes an error, we should go ahead and fix it. So I'll leave that up to you. But anyway, hopefully this was helpful. Again, thank you for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe and tell your friends and family and neighbors and close relatives and anyone you see on the street. And yeah, thanks for watching.